Welcome, everyone. My name is Gien Verschatse. I work for a company called Aartling as a consultant. I'm one of those annoying people that says it depends. And what I do is I help companies design their socio-technical software systems. And today I want to talk about products and technology for weddings and a funeral. Like, I can't promise there will be 4 weddings in this talk, but I promise you there will definitely be a funeral. Okay, so I go to companies and I kind of help them out. And I try to, sort of get an understanding of their software architecture and their design. And I also, want to talk about, the product in its totality that they are creating. So I ask, what is your product? Oh, we have a lot. We have our customer journeys, we have our payment services, we have this, we have that. It was like, yes, but what is your product? Oh, we have our payments, we have our customer services, we have this, we have that. I said, yes, but what is your product? And I had this a couple of times with my clients. Like, I noticed that they were sort of looking at a product in such a low level, that they sort of forgot about the actual product and the purpose of this product. So I tried switching it up. I said, okay, tell me about your value stream product. Tell me about your internal product. Tell me about your customer-facing product. And it just was not really working. It was just too confusing. So I was like, okay, I'm going to take a step back. I'm going to go back to the beginning. I'm going to sort of re-examine what we know about product development, how it all works out there in the wild. And I'm going to try to come up with some good definitions that I can use with my customers and then see how I can help them sort of, figure out their team organization with a product thinking in mind. So that's what I did. And the first thing I did is try to define a product, obviously, because that's what we're talking about. And you get very interesting things. Like this one is any item or service, and it kind of has to fulfill a customer need or a want. It can be physical or virtual. It has characteristics, so that's great. And, as always on the internet, things got a bit strange. Basically, a product can be anything you want to sell. But it does have to address a desire or a need, so not anything anymore. And then while I was reading, it said, well, it's not always exactly clear what a product is that, the business or the company is selling. I was like, yeah, of course, because you said it could be anything. That's not very limiting to what the product is. And, then all of a sudden they started talking about stakeholders. But then they also said, no, you have customers and things can be tangible and intangible. And this is my favorite one. Not the first sentence, that's pretty standard, but a product can be a service or an item. It can be physical, virtual, or cyber form. I was like, what the hell is cyber form? So I did that for a lot more definitions out there on the internet that I'm going to show you because that would get a bit boring. But basically, they did have a lot of things in common. And that is how I built my understanding of what a product exactly is. So first of all, a product is customer-facing. And that customer can be a business or a person. Secondly, your product kind of has to fulfill a need or a desire or a want for that customer that you're selling it to. There are many different kinds of products out there. It can be physical, like I can actually touch it. Like if I buy a car, I can touch my car. It could be a service. Like if my car breaks down, I hand it in, they fix it, and I pay for it, right? So that is a service. But it can also be virtual, and virtual is something that I understand it in my head, but I can't touch it and I can't do something. For example, a car insurance. Right? I know what it does. Like everybody knows what a car insurance does. I don't want to go without it, but there's nothing there. And since we're at a conference, a very good example of a product here at a conference is a sponsor package, right? Because what you buy is exposure. And, well, you can't actually touch exposure and you can't do something, but it's there and you bought it. And also, a product has value exchange, right? So they have a need and a desire, and you're exchanging things for it, which is money. Of course, now in the time of software, that can also be your data, right? Like we give you the product for free and we get your data, but it's still a value exchange that is happening, and that needs to be there for something to be a product. And also, a product has a strategy. This seemed very important when I was doing my research. So first of all, that strategy sort of has to describe the market. So basically, which customers do I have, but also which users do I have? I thought, well, it's very interesting because there's a clear distinction between, the customer who is buying this and the user who will actually use this. And also, you need to be able to understand the key features and differentiators. Right, you need to understand why your product, like why your customers will buy your product and not that of the competitor. You need to define that clearly if you want to develop a product. And then it also needs to sort of capture the business rules. And the business rules are a bit la raison d'être, right? The reason for existence inside this company. So, for example, I have this clicker in my hand from Logitech. They made this to make money. Like that is why they did that. So revenue is the business goal here. But it's not true. But imagine that they were not that popular, right? They have mouses, they have keyboards, they have game controllers. And, they wanted to create a bit more of brand awareness. So they made this clicker and they put it on the market. They're still going to have revenue, but it's a different reason for actually putting, for building this product inside the company. Or you have these very weird people who actually want to stand a distance away from their computer and they want to do click things. So we want to sort of offer them the total package. We want to give them keyboard, mouses, and the clickers. So the product is there to support another product. And you need to understand, why you're building it, because you're going to do it slightly different for different reasons. So that is sort of the strategy that you need to understand. I said, that great. And I said, well, value streams are very important when you want to design a product. So I said, okay, what is a value stream? And then you get fun things like set of actions that deliver value to the customer from the initial need until the realization of that value by the customer. Was like, okay. So basically, from the ID until it's actually at the customer, that sort of is your value stream. And the purpose of understanding this value stream is to satisfy or delight your customer, right? We want them to be happy, no matter what reason we're doing this for. And I was like, okay, so what does this look like? And then I find interesting images like this, because I wasn't specifically looking at software at that point. And I don't know about you, but I can really feel the delight coming out of this. Really. I was like, okay, it doesn't tell me much, but I kind of noticed these sort of time indications and stuff happening. Was all right. Let me just move on for a while. The value chain. And it says, a progression of activities that a firm operating in a specific industry performs in order to deliver a valuable product to the end customer. I was like, oh, they're talking about end customers. We'll have to dig into the difference between customers and end customers at some point, but I'm not going to do that right now. So basically, they're talking about the capabilities, right? So what does this company have to do in order to deliver value to the customer, right? So you have the value stream, which is sort of from a customer perspective, and then you have the value chain, which is from the company's perspective. And the purpose of understanding and having a value chain is to, gain competitive advantage. It was like, great, we love competitive advantage. And then I started looking for things. And I got things like Potter's generic value chain, which honestly, I was like, okay, software, I don't think I have inbound logistics and outbound logistics when making software. I'm not entirely sure. So I was a bit confused. Like this all, what I found was very much for physical products. And I was like, yes, but I want to understand how this works for software. And then I found a few examples, not that many out there, but I found a few, like this. So the feature request is basically the initial thing of the value stream. This is the value stream, in case you don't know. And then it goes back and forth through different phases until you deploy, so until it is delivered with the customer. And you had also those time indications. It was like, great, I said, let me find another example. And then I had a value stream of bug fixing. was like, well, I don't think bug fixing is a value stream. Like, you're not delivering valuable. It's like you're fixing the flawed value you delivered in the first place. And is this like one big? Do you have to calculate, like say, okay, everything and bug fixes, but then you're in a never-ending loop and you kind of never deliver. So maybe that's why they put it separately. And I was like, okay, Gien, maybe you're just overthinking this. What do I find interesting about these value streams that I have found? And what I found interesting was the time indications on it. How long does it take, right? Because a lot of customers come to me and they say, we want to deliver faster. It takes us right now, it takes like 6 months, and we don't want to do that anymore. We want to go faster. So Paul Reiner did something and he called it team flow. And it's a bit like value stream mapping, which I just show you, in which you sort of show the queues and the bottlenecks and all the steps that you go through to deliver something in deployment. And what you then try to do is you try to optimize it. You try to remove the bottlenecks and you try to remove the queues. Now, here's an important tip when you try to do this yourselves. Like, add your meetings. Because meetings are where queues start to form. And if you don't do that, like I had a customer and they had a 2-week meeting, and if you started developing a feature at the beginning, but you got stuck right away, then you had to wait 2 weeks until that meeting had happened to actually continue. So, well, that's a queue and it's a bottleneck, and we can fix this, and then you will go faster. So it's very interesting for that. I was like, okay, I kind of now know how I can use this for software and how I can make this valuable for software, this value stream. So what about the value chain? And then I found this, which is an alternation of the generic Potter value chain with no explanation whatsoever. It was just, this is it. It was like strategic portfolio management. I have no idea what that is. But I had heard of Wardley mapping. Who else has heard of Wardley mapping? Yeah, quite some hands. Lovely. So it's sort of like a map to strategize about your company. And I was like, okay, you can also do this for a single product. We start with the customer and their needs, and underneath that, you add the capabilities, right? So you create a value chain of everything that you need to do. The interesting thing about this is that you have, right, not everything correlates directly to the customer. Some things are more hidden, but it enables other capabilities inside your company. And then you can start mapping evolution, which is very good if you want to see where can I get my competitive advantages. So I really love this, and I use this tool a lot. It's like, okay, so I get value stream, I get value chain, I get the difference, I get how I can start conversations with this in the companies I work for. But, you know, they want to do product thinking. What exactly is that? So it's customer-centric, right? The customer is the most important thing when you create a product. In product thinking, it says that you have to focus on the problem first, right? So you really have to understand those needs that you're trying to fulfill in the first place, which sometimes I think we forget a bit to really understand, hey, what's your problem? You also want to maximize the value exchange, right? Like getting most out of your money is basically what this says. And you have to do it in the context of your business goals, and that's okay, because if you have a product strategy, then you kind of know the business goals that are there. Okay, but it was like, when is software a product? Because, okay, I have customers and they're definitely creating a product. But I also have different types of customers. So software is a product when it's customer facing, when there's value exchange, when it fulfills a need, and it's a service or a virtual. I'm going to be honest, I don't really know. Like which one of this is. I definitely can imagine it and I get something out of it, but I don't know really which one of those two I need to categorize it in. So I was thinking about the companies I had worked for and the clients that I had, and was like, I can think about 3 types of software systems I have worked on. You know, for because I'm a nice person, I made them anonymous. So these are not real companies, but they're sort of based on companies that I have worked for. So the first one is PotTrack. And basically, I'm very bad at watering my plants. So I'm going to get a subscription for having an app that reminds me when to water my plants, right? So that's a service. It tells me what is my want or need, like, hey, please tell me when to water my plants because I keep forgetting. It's a subscription, I pay monthly, and it's for private accounts. So how is the software being used here, right? It's what do we sell? That's sort of how it works. And then I thought about another company I had worked for. And it was called WaterAway. It was not called WaterAway. Right, it was for personal or business use. It had bundles and fixed rates. And they took it a step further and was like, I want someone to water my plants. I don't want to be reminded because I just turn off the reminders. I forget. I want someone to water my plants. So it's a service. But it's not the software. It's watering the plants that is that service. So it's like, okay, how is the software being used here then? Well, it's how do we sell it, right? We offer software. You can schedule when you want them to come over. You can pause it for a while, all that kind of stuff. So it's not the product anymore. Definitely not, because the watering, if they didn't water the plants, I would not be satisfied. And that is the product. I was okay, this is interesting. And then the last company is called CD, and they're for farmers. They offer GMO seed packages. They want to offer healthier fruit and vegetables in the garden, so you can plant them. They have more resistance against nature. And the product is actually physical because you get those seeds. But they had software. And the whole point of software was to assist the research and development in getting those seeds as good as possible. So the software was about how do we get better. So again, it wasn't the product. And I sort of found these three. If you can think of anything else, then come find me after the talk. But I think that sort of covers how software is being used inside companies. But then I thought a bit further about the PotTrack, because that one was fuzzy. Because I worked on the product, but I also worked on stuff that, really wasn't the product. It was about, getting better at selling the product. So even a product company, right, software product company, does not only have software that actually is the product, it has other things as well, right? And that software needs to be connected with that product because they need to get information out of it to understand how to get better. So no matter in which situation you are, your software system never is your product. Like it's not a one-on-one relationship. It doesn't line up nicely. And I have seen companies trying to, sort of line this up nicely, and it just doesn't work. It's too simplistic. But okay, so not all software should be a product. And I know it's way cooler to say that you're working on a product than that you're working on some other parts of the software system, but that's the way it is. And I also, I don't want to treat the way we do this exactly the same. So maybe we should think about, developing those parts of the software system differently than that we do with products, and not just, I don't know how to say this in English, but say, so drag everything over the same line, it says in Dutch. I don't know if that translates, but I think you get the point. There is one Dutch person laughing. She gets it. And I thought, I know there's a lot of bad rap around projects, but maybe they are still useful in some of the situations. So let me, figure out what exactly a project is. I had never done that before. So it's a sequence of tasks. They all agree on that. They also agree that it's temporary, but anyone who worked on projects kind of know that they have a tendency to drag on and maybe not really finish. They do say it's around a specific outcome, goal, or output, and all of them agreed it needed management. Not for a product, you don't need management for a product, but when you have projects, you definitely need managers. I thought that was funny. But the interesting part about this was that people told me, like, hey, you can't work with projects because, projects focus on output, and you have to work with products because that actually focus on outcome. But a lot of definitions on a project disagreed with that. So you can organize projects around outcome. So I was like, yay. But then, when do I use what? I want to understand that, like, when do I use what? So I'm going to go back to the project strategy. And in there it said, right, key features and differentiators to choose this over the competing offering. And I was like, ooh, I know domain-driven design. I have a model or a way of talking about, what are key features and differentiators. We call that the core subdomain. We also have the supporting and the generic. So the core subdomain is that which adds the most value to your organization or to your system, right? It's the reason you're building a custom software system most of the time. And supporting has not a limited return on investment. There's not that much business logic in there anymore. It's just there to support your core, right? It's everything that you have to do to support the core. Supporting does not mean unimportant. The term is settled, so we're stuck with it. But there's a lot of but they work on supporting. We're like, if we turn off those servers of the supporting, system will fail. So it's not unimportant at all. And then you have the generic one, which kind of sad. It's these things that we have to do to keep the company running. Like, we have to be able to make invoices, we have to be able to receive payments and all that kind of stuff. You would like to take them for granted. Doesn't mean you can. There's not always something out there that you can get off the shelf and sort of plug in with integrations into your system. But if you have a generic subdomain, like that's a very good candidate for that. And someone else solves that problem, and then you just use however they do that. Okay, so how many people have heard of domain-driven design before? Every year the hands get more and more, and I love that. So this is the definition that we use at Artling. So we say it's a design discipline where you try to, grasp the domain, understand the problem first. What exactly are you doing here? How does that work? You have to agree on the language because domain language is extremely fuzzy. And ambiguity, and that doesn't work inside your software systems. So you have to design a language that sort of works for everything. You express that in shared models, and models everywhere, not just the ones in your code, but also in your head, right? We all have to be on the same side of how this works, and surprisingly, a lot of people in the company aren't. Even if they are domain experts, right? They see, no, this works totally different. No, this works like this works like that. It's like, okay, it works both ways, right? I embrace the complexity. Like, you want things to work this way, you want things to work that way. They're not quite the same. That's great. I'll just separate that and create dedicated models to it. And I will evolve them for each one of you to your needs. And there are many tools to do this. Domain-driven design isn't about the strategic patterns, and it isn't about the tactical patterns. It's about those principles, and then you have a whole lot of tools to do this. And the fun thing is that you can take tools of a different industry, like the business model canvas, and you can port that into, and you can use that tool to have valuable conversations to understand the complexity behind it. Same for wordly mapping. Then you have some specific ones, which is like example mapping, event storming. They're all tactical patterns. They're all pretty much coming from domain-driven design itself. And, so I'm thinking about products, and I am working on those higher levels. So I am focusing on separating it into contexts and evolving them over time. And these are called bounded contexts. So a bounded context is basically an explicit boundary that you draw around a piece of functionality, and you design a model and a language for it. And you make sure that stays consistent over time, right? So the meaning of the model and the language stays consistent. For example, you have, if you take the pod track again, you have to schedule your water, and you have a plant there. And that's a very specific plant inside my house. But if, the app can also offer suggestions, like, oh, you love these plants, why don't you buy these plants? And those plants are not specific plants inside my house anymore. But we both call it plant. It's just that how we model that is extremely different. So what we do is we draw boundaries around that, and one is water scheduling and the other one is suggestions, and we just, keep the definitions within those two consistent. All right, so I'm going to start with where the software is the product. All right, and then I want to validate with waterway and city. So that's sort of what I thought, hey, I'll use that as an approach, because I know there's other ways to do software, and I kind of want to find something that works for both, to sort of think about how can we organize everything and what works. So I have my bounded context. It's an extract, right? They're not all of them are there, but there are a few important ones to make my point on this. And we also have a classification tool. I'm taking a sip so you can look at the tool more. No, it's something that we use with customers, and it's sort of how we try to understand what is core, what is supporting, and what is generic. And again, surprise, surprise, nobody inside a company ever agrees on this. Most of the time, they kind of overvalue what they're working on themselves. I did the same thing. Worked for a biotech company, and it was like, I'm working on the core, woo, for 3 years. And I was like, no, I'm working on the supporting. I did it myself. Like, that is not the core at all. That does not give us a competitive advantage. But it needs to be done. Right, so we use this to have discussions around it. We map the business differentiation with the model complexity. Right, so we want to find those key features and differentiators of our product. In our product strategy, we sort of want to understand where inside our software system that actually lives. So I did that. I was okay. I'm talking about some of it is going to be a product. Some of it we want to treat as a project. What does that mean, right? Generic and supporting, right? We want temporary teams. Clear ownership is maybe not necessary. There's this idea inside software companies that all software has to belong to a team, and sometimes yes, sometimes no. It depends. So I don't always want clear ownership on parts of the system. So and maybe I can treat those as projects. And then I have on my other side, I have my core and some of my supporting, and what I want are stable teams. There's important knowledge in there, and I want that knowledge not to get lost. I want clear ownership, and that is a product. Yes, that is not the product. Because I have core and supporting things on which I want these characteristics, right? I want clear ownership and I want stable teams. I don't want the knowledge to get lost. But for CD and Waterway, I don't have a product. And I still want this, right? Because how do we make the things better? Like, you can define the core of that inside your software system as well. And that just, didn't really work here. Like, okay, I can't do a project versus a product thing with this. I can't just doodle. I don't have a name for whatever it is. I do know that I want stable teams and clear ownership. So I was like, okay, this is not enough. I need something else. And, Dave Farley yesterday said that, software development is about exploration and discovery and experimenting, and that it's super scary. Well, yes, like, I'm testing what I'm about to tell you. I'm sort of testing this with clients, see if it's workable, but it's still very alpha, beta-ish. So it's not it's an ID that I want to share with all of you now. I also want to add that, well, this is probably not going to work for an enterprise. If you have a company that has like 50 or 100 teams, that what I'm about to show you probably won't work. So I went back to my product thinking, and they said, right, customer-centric. That's very important. If you want to do that, the customer has to be central. All right. And if you say something 3 times, that makes it true. So customer, customer, customer. I was like, no, but I do know something, right? We have the customer journey or the user journey, and I can start from there, right? So I took inspiration out of the value chain. I had my customer journey, and I chop, started chopping it into sort of understandable bits and gave it a name. And then I thought, well, there's a lot more going on in software that is, sort of there to enable the customer journey. So I'll add that too. Again, this is an extract. That's not everything. And I will call those streamlets. And I gave it a definition because that's what you do. It's a cohesive grouping of actions that contribute directly or indirectly to the customer or user journey. And I was okay, now I can sort of, look at this. The further away it is from the customer journey, I mean, maybe product, project, no. I was like, very, very soon, I was like, nope, this is not going to be it. I did not discover something brilliant. The sad thing is that I have seen companies organize teams around this idea, around, sort of the customer journeys, and they have a lot of trouble getting things going. I was like, I don't want to do this. This is not a good idea. But I do have information that I want to use. So what if I took my bounded contexts, which I know, and I have classified them? So now I can say, hey, this is my core, this is my supporting, this is my generic. And I have my streamlets, right? I have that chain. I can sort of, and I chop them off small enough that I can sort of say, okay, this one works for that, this one works for that, this one works for that. Again, this is just an extract, not everything is there. Because if you were in the talk yesterday, you know how diagrams get utterly messed up. And, bounded contexts also have to talk to each other. So I drew those lines out as well, because I wanted to take, how chatty some had to be when I thought about how do I organize, how do I define the qualities that I want. And then I started sort of seeing, okay, like stable team or not a stable team, how much does this actually, is this close to my customer journey? Is it further away? Does it have to talk to a lot of things, which means that it probably is important? And I sort of tried to classify this, and it worked. I said it's experimental. I got to do this for one, but it works. And then I tested it out, right, for those companies that actually don't have a product, right, CD and Waterway. And it seems to work too. I can get a better understanding of how I should organize the teams and, where I actually want that stable thing. And I can say, okay, these are the stable teams and we should start treating them differently. And we should create different sort of value streams for them. Because we want this out fast, and this is a bit different, right? And it's generic, and we'll see which teams have the capability to deal with it, and just see as it go around. It's just one problem that isn't a product. Like those stable teams are not a product, so I don't really have a name for that. I didn't know. I had no inspiration. I don't know how to call it, except stable teams maybe, but who knows? I just realized that right now, that I can call it stable teams. So that's great. I also showed this I did this in one of my workshops and sort of showed the reasoning behind all of this and how I came to this conclusion. And there was this person that said, yeah, actually we have stable teams, but not on knowledge. Right, we have dedicated sizes of teams of which we know how much they can handle, and then we have our bounded contexts and then our software, and we just put things on the teams. right? Size-wise, right? If we have something big, we put it on a bigger team, right? So that's sort of how we do. So we have stable teams, but we don't have that on knowledge. Should we change this? It was like, does it work? Yeah, it kind of works. I said, no, then you should not change this, right? If this works, if you have a system on how to organize your teams that work, then, don't do this exercise. Don't try it out. You can only go backwards from there on out. Okay, so that's sort of what I'm trying to do. I'm not sure yet if that streamlet, like similar as the value chain, is valuable. I need to think about it a bit more. I need to try a few things out a bit more. I do think that linking those bounded contexts with the streamlet, a marriage, is sort of gave me valuable information to sort of better assess how which parts or products, like about what exactly in the software system are we talking about that is important. Not necessarily the product. As I said, I don't have a name for that. I'm not sure we should have a name for that. I do know one thing, and it is I don't want to call that product teams anymore. I don't want to call that low level, like the bounded contexts almost, I don't want to call that a product anymore. Because we're losing sight of what the actual product is inside the company. Not sure what else to call it. And I would sort of love to hear your opinions, things you have tried out yourself, because I think that sort of doing all of this product thinking and then organizing your teams around it in a way that is still flexible to evolve over time is a hard problem. It's a problem many of my clients have right now. I'm trying to help them as best as I can. It's just that you only see the results years later. And so it's hard to come up with good ideas around this. All right, so I'm gonna leave, not gonna do a QA, but I'm at the Artling booth. We have a booth here, maybe you already saw it. We have lovely, well-designed cups that you can take home. And we also have a Beats Solo 3, which you can win. And you still have time to subscribe until, I wrote it down, 4:30. Right, we give it away at 4:30, the last big break, so you can still come up and participate in there. And then I went to a talk about imposter syndrome yesterday and tooting your own horn. And after the talk, I added this slide. So again, thank you. One Dutch person who is very enthusiastic, definitely not my friend in the audience. So I'm writing a book. Like, as I said, I design socio-technical systems. I do feel that the socio is still very much... oh, you have e-codes. Excellent. I did not know that happened. It's my book. But you can win ebooks. Yeah, you can win ebooks. Yay! Right, I designed the socio-technical systems, but socio, even though my talk was about this a bit, is still very limited to how do we organize our teams around our software. But, the socio and socio-technical systems is so much more. Because you have conflict, you have ranking, you have biases you have to deal with, all that kind of stuff. So me and two other lovely people decided that we're going to write a book that really talks about the social challenges of collaborative software design, right? Whether in the software team or between domain experts, a lot of things come up. So we want to dig a bit deeper into that. So that is the book. You can, if you don't win it, there's still today, especially for me, they give a discount, by the way, on all the Manning books. And tomorrow, if you prefer print, they have a discount on that tomorrow. And with that, I get to thank you and give away free books.